Richard Nixon signed into law a measure that amended the Older Americans Act of 1965 and established a national nutrition program for seniors 60 years and older. And whereas the Humboldt Senior Resource Center observes the National March for Meals campaign to raise awareness about the escalating problem of senior hunger and isolation in our communities. And whereas through the Older Americans Act nutrition programs, the Humboldt Senior Resource Center has served the Fortuna community admirably for over 35 years. The center provides nutritious meals to seniors which help to maintain their health and independence and avoid unnecessary hospitalizations and/or premature institutionalization. And whereas the Humboldt Senior Resource Center's congregate and home-delivered meal programs provide a powerful socialization opportunity for hundreds of seniors to help combat loneliness and isolation. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sue Long, Mayor of Fortuna, do hereby proclaim March 2020 as March for Meals Month. The council urges all residents to honor the foundations, service organizations, businesses, and individuals who support our senior nutrition programs as well as the seniors they serve. And we have a representative here to grab this.
I brought some information for the council. Should I give this to you? Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity to come tonight. My name is Barbara Walser. I'm the Director of Nutrition and Activities with the Humboldt Senior Resource Center. Again, thank you for this opportunity, this proclamation, and this time that I can just say a little bit about our senior nutrition program. As you no doubt know, we have 3 dining centers, one in Arcata, one in Eureka, and of course, the important one here in Fortuna. And the most exciting thing for us about Fortuna, as you probably know, and you've probably been to the building, is we were able to move our dining center. For 35 years, we've been at Mountain View Village, the senior apartment complex over on Smith Lane. And Lutheran Homes for the Aging has been wonderful and generous to us for 35 years. But this opportunity for us in Fortuna to move our dining center over to the Gene Lucas Community Center and be right in the same building as Fortuna Senior Center is only going to make the program better to be associated with them. We're thrilled about it. In our nutrition program from McKinleyville to Fortuna, we provided over 63,000 meals in the last fiscal year. And right here in Fortuna alone, we provided 8,300 meals. And in the dining centers, it's not just that meal. In fact, if I had brought our brochure tonight, on the front of the brochure, it says it's not just a meal. Because you could walk around the dining room and ask people why they're there, and some are definitely there for the meal. That's the most important meal they have of the day. But for some of them, it's that opportunity to sit with friends, to meet up with people and have conversations while they have a meal. Much better than sitting at home alone by yourself, maybe opening a can of soup or even having a bowl of cereal. So it really is, the socialization is just as important in the meals as the meals. And for our home delivered meal program, the meal is important, but we also provide what we call an informal safety check. So when the driver delivers the meal that day to this homebound elderly individual, they observe what's going on. And if something is wrong, perhaps they've found people that have fallen and called for help, or the participant is not well, then we have a whole protocol that we go through. Or the person's not home, they're not answering the door. There's a protocol that we go through, whether it's calling that person and then calling their emergency contacts, or even doing a welfare check on that person. So those informal safety checks are just as important. Over at the Gene Lucas Community Center, not only is our dining center there, but we package and we deliver the home delivered meals from there. And home delivered meals, many in the community refer to it as Meals on Wheels. So that's what I like to refer to it, because many think of it that way. Besides the excellent news about moving our dining center in Fortuna, I wanted to just talk a little bit about some other restoration that has affected some of our other programs, our other nutrition programs. Back in 2013 and 14, we actually had to reduce. We changed our dining centers from serving meals 5 days a week to 4 days a week, and we went from delivering meals 5 days a week to 4 days a week. We still kept the home delivered meals at 5 because we thought it was so valuable. But our board of directors, through their strategic visioning, has really encouraged us and helped us find a pathway to restore some of those services. So in Eureka and Arcata, we've restored the Monday services, and we're delivering the meals again on Monday. We haven't taken those steps in Fortuna because, frankly, we have to get used to our new site, and we have to figure out what we're doing there before we determine what we're able to do and what the Fortuna Senior Center is interested in having us do. But it's all really good news for these programs. Participating in March for Meals helps us bring attention to this program, and many of you have taken opportunity to ride along on one of our routes, or you come to our dining room to help us serve the meal. And if you haven't had that opportunity and you're really wanting to give it a try, in the packets today that I gave out, it has my business card. Give me a call. I'm happy to arrange that visit for you. It's a really great way to connect in the community. In the packet, you've received 3 different documents. One is some statistics on our home delivered meals and on our congregate meal program of exactly who we serve. And the other one is a statistical sheet that Meals on Wheels puts out that talks about the need, the escalating problem of senior hunger and isolation. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And once again, I thank you so much for this opportunity to share about the program. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Any questions? I always look forward to you coming and getting a little update, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this time, we have oral comments from the public. If anyone would like to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda, now is the time. We cannot take action on anything that is not on the agenda, but we can listen to you. You have 3 minutes to tell us whatever it is that's on your mind. Good evening.
Council Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, my name's James Graham. I'd just like to say I really like the way the city of Fortuna is headed and the way you council listen to people. And what I'm really here for, though, is to present this to the ex-chief that retired. And I would like you guys to take it and then give it to him since he's not here. I had this made for him. Camera, I don't know where it is. It's really, really nice sketch of him, and it's to honor him.
Thank you.
And where would I like to?
You can hand that to Sienna if you would, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
Madam Mayor and council members, it was not my intention to come here this evening and speak, but I'm motivated to be here this evening because my wife, Katie Garrison, and I am Orville Garrison, resident and voter of Fortuna, living on Kelly Way. I'm motivated to come here this evening because my wife, who is the director of the local food bank in town, commonly known as the Pantry, had an interesting experience today among some of her clients. One in particular, supported by a couple of others, made the remark, initiated by him and them, that it was important for all of us to vote tomorrow against Prop 13. And so, in the course of his explanation, he discussed how it was so important that his property taxes not be raised that he had to encourage himself and others to vote against Prop 13, which is, of course, the proposition on the ballot tomorrow, which voters at the polls may vote on. My wife asked him, and she is more diplomatic and politic than I am sometimes, "Have you read the voter pamphlet?" And of course, he did somewhat sheepishly admit that no, he had not read it. And so my wife proceeded to explain to him that Prop 13, which is on the ballot tomorrow, has nothing to do with property taxes. It is a school bond issue, something that voters in California through the decades have tended to support, because such bond issues for schools help to build, renovate, and modernize our schools, something that even schools in Fortuna have been recipients of in the past in terms of state aid. And
Can I
so,
interrupt you for just one
yes.
minute? Do we normally take comments on how people are going to vote or direction to give to people to vote? Do we do this?
No, I don't want them to take direction from me in terms of how to vote. I'm not advocating that people vote for or against this initiative. That is
But you're explaining it kind of from your point of view, and I
Well,
don't
no,
know that that's...
I'm trying to express
Okay,
that I
go on.
believe it's important that people read the information in the voter pamphlet. Whether one votes for or against Prop 13 is not my decision for them to make. They do that in the privacy of the voting booth or in their vote by mail option. What I would say is, please, voters of this community, read the voter pamphlet and know what it is you're voting on. Truth is truth, fact is fact. Know what the fact is. How they vote, I'm not advising anyone to vote in any particular direction. And I thank you for this opportunity to express that to the community in this venue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Long and council members, Francine Riza, I live here in Fortuna. I just wanted to say, last week's North Coast Journal on the front page inside the cover had a great list of things to do for the leap year day that were all from Fortuna, places to give, things to, food to give to, or organizations to give to, and I thought that was just really great.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, Council, thank you. So I'm Sean Swanson from River Life Foundation. I just want to thank the City of Fortuna for their cooperation and their partnership with River Life. I cannot thank you guys, the police department, the city manager, all those that have come along in a partnership, especially CAL FIRE, the work that they have done to extend what we have done in the Fortuna Boulevard area, the the Town of Scotia property at the south end of town, and then the northbound on and off ramp at Kenmar. Those areas look amazing now. We have cleared, with the help of the Humboldt County Sheriffs and Caltrans now, the area southbound at Palmer. Those areas are cleaned, so we don't have to worry about possible BB gun shootings like we had a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's just amazing. To date, River Life Foundation, and it's incredible to believe that in 11.5 years of service, we've cleaned up 390,000 pounds of trash. We've also assisted 156 folks get out of the area, reunited with family or onto a job or into a rehab. We've also helped with 14 dogs. So it's just amazing what River Life has done for the community. I just want to thank you guys for all being in a partnership to help change our community, to make it a better place, to do positive things, and to help to reduce the negative activities that we do have in this town. So just thank you guys all very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for what you do. Anyone else? All right, we'll close public comment and move on to our agenda. Our consent calendar consists of 4 items: city council minutes, report of disbursements, designation of city agents to the California Office of Emergency Services, and approve a temporary overhire of the street maintenance 3 position. I know that there have already been some corrections to the city council minutes, so with that, does anybody wish to pull anything? Seeing none, we'll need a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
With the corrections to the minutes.
With the corrections to the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we have Sienna with a discussion of the City of Fortuna new website.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Tonight, I'm going to be providing you with an update to the redesign to the city's website. And as you all know, I did provide a staff report for you. However, I put together a brief presentation to kind of summarize those points for your benefit and for the benefit of the public. So if I can get this to cooperate. Give me just 1 second.
And if you guys will all help remind me when we have presentations on the board to turn the lights off, because the viewers at home complain about not being able to read it, and I think that's partly because we keep forgetting to turn all the lights off. So help us remember to do that.
Okay. So City of Fortuna website redesign, hopefully a friendly new face. Our current site is hosted on a platform that is over 10 years old, and much of the current site is redundant and the information is difficult to access. You kind of can see a picture here of the current website. It's pretty busy. The style of the current website is referred to as traditional, and it's overladen with menus, drop-down lists, and submenus, making accessibility a bit of an issue. So you can kind of see if you were to search for a department, you kind of pick something in the first menu, and then there'll be this sub flyout. And this is actually a snapshot of just 2 of the columns. They can go out to 4 and 5, depending on what you're looking for. And this is kind of representation of what the current state of the site is. So will a facelift help? The city has identified that the website is a necessary tool. It's also a valuable resource, and websites are used as a reflection of an organization or agency's face, and they're used as marketing and economic and advertising motivators. So it is pretty important. It's the thing that the public sees when they access information about a municipality. Having a fresh new look and updated content keeps the city competitive, and not only in search results, but ultimately for potential employees, for visitors and residents to the city. Redesign provides the opportunity to evolve and keep up with expected design standards, and not just visual design standards, it's also accessibility, so those who have certain limitations as defined by the ADA, and also making information available on a wide range of devices, so not just desktops, but phones, mobile devices, tablets, etc. Redesign provides the opportunity to evolve. It keeps up with expected design standards, and the city's website exists predominantly for its users and should attract and encourage user engagements and revisits. And so staff is using this great opportunity to kind of reconnect with our website and use it to reflect the city as it is currently and the services that we're able to provide. And it's also just keeping the face of the city current and fresh. So where did we start with this process? In May of 2018, staff obtained proposals from qualified firms to redesign the site. And after receiving 3 competitive bids, the city chose to work with Revise Software Systems as our development partner. The Revise proposal came in at a lower cost than that of the city's current site, which was an immediate cost benefit. And it was also helpful that Revise specializes in empowering non-technical people like myself, web content editors, to easily change the content of the website. So we're not relying on the age-old webmaster to make, easy changes that we can oversee in-house. This approach will be more time-consuming, that is true, but it's also going to come at a great cost savings to the city, and ultimately, this was the best choice for the city from a financial perspective. So where are we now? To date, we have completed 6 phases, and not to go into too much detail, Phase 1 included colors and branding. That was the layout, the style and feel, the homepage elements, and the actions that were going to be available on the homepage. Phase 2 was the actual design and concept, and Phase 3 and 4, creating and modifying digital content. That was kind of looking what we had existing in our current website and then modifying it to fit the new design that we had chosen. And then quality assurance was done by Revise, and that was to ensure that the pages were functioning correctly, that the links were functioning correctly, and that the things that were migrated over, the documents that were migrated over were accessible. They might have not been current, but they were accessible at the time. And Phase 6 was content migration, so we migrated 760 web pages and 390 documents from the existing website into the current website. And we are currently working in Phase 7. This is, to put it simply, to create a more personalized feel to the website, to allow departments to really work with us to reflect what they are providing and how they want their departments to really come across to the public, as well as reflect the services that are available. Phase 8 is go live, and that is anticipated at the end of this month. So we're on a short time frame, and we're hoping to have everything in place by the end of this month. We're almost at the end of this here. As part of the last steps, staff continues to work with all city departments for content updating. We're working on streamlining. So streamlining is the look of the site as well as the information that's available. Streamlining includes allowing residents and businesses to easily fill out and submit documents, access utility payments, perform searches for frequently asked questions, and find information regarding permitting with ease. Goals include enhancing Fortuna's web presence, engaging, informing, and increasing community participation, encouraging residents to use the site as an information center, and that's really a key component to this. It's not just about putting our services, but it really should be a hub for information, not only for our current residents, for anybody who's visiting or is interested in coming to the city, and also providing content that will get people interested to come to the city. So it's a very resourceful tool, and I think with the time that we have put into it and the design that is currently at, I think it's going to be a vast improvement to what we currently have. And so this has and will continue to take time and energy, but we're working hard, and we're hoping that everybody will see that reflected in the final product when we publish at the end of the month. So with that, I'm going to switch over here. I would just remind you as we go through this that we are not live, and in that there are buttons that you will see in the content that are specific to editing. And so I'll explain it to you once I get it up here. Okay. Yeah, I guess I would point out a couple of things right off the bat. Number one, I'm remoting into my desktop, which creates a little bit of a delay as I go through this. So it will take a little bit longer for pages to load or for me to move the mouse around, but that's just because you're seeing my desktop reflected through the laptop. And then the things that I were mentioning, these kind of tabs in the middle of the page and where it says edit social, you wouldn't see those things normally, but because we're not live, I'm not able to remove those for the benefit of this presentation. So first of all, right off the bat, I think everybody can see it looks really different, and it's vibrant, and it's clean, and it has really beautiful pictures. I have to say, I'm going to give some credit here to Sandy Peterson, because she has been working with me and shooting lots of different pictures to us as we've been doing this, so that's really exciting to be able to have the different pages reflect actual scenes from our city. So I'm going to focus on the home page, and then I'll take you through the departments, point out some of the nice new features, and then I will open it up to any questions, comments, or feedback that you have. So this picture that you see rotating is called a slider or banner. These pictures can be changed very easily. We can change them by season, by event, and they can also be turned into drone footage. So you can link a YouTube video. So if we had some really cool drone footage that we wanted to put in there, we could change that out easily. As you scroll down the home page, you're going to see some new features. It looks really different. Again, photo credit Sandy Peterson. They're beautiful. Right now they say eat, shop, stay. These are quick links. They're intended to take you to a page under the Our Community tab, which I will get into in a little bit, and it will really allow us to highlight some of the features that are special to Fortuna. And if I click on one of these, I'm just going to go and show you. It takes us to this page, and while there's not a lot of content on here now, eat, shop, stay are all anchored. So when you use those quick links on the home page, once we fill the page with content, it will take you to that specific spot in the page. So just for reference. Back to the home page. As we scroll down, this isn't something new per se, the news and events, but these function a little bit differently than our current website. We have a main city calendar, and what you see on the left-hand column is the feed that comes out of that calendar. You can have a calendar in different departments. So for an example, Parks and Recreation has a very busy calendar. We can feed the events from that calendar into this main feed. So we can choose or filter what is shown on this main feed, and we can create as many calendars throughout the website that we may need depending on department needs. What's nice about this, and again, keep in mind it's in an editing stage, so some of this information won't be there when we go live, but you can click right on a city council meeting and it will show you the date and time, and we're hoping to be able to add the location to that information as well. So just kind of handy, at a glance, click, get your information. And the same is true for the events and news feed. We are able to put into this feed whatever pertinent information we might have, road closures, public notices, information from the police department. Anything that we want to highlight would come up in this feed, and it's nice because it's visible. We can add a picture, and we can change that out with regularity. So that's kind of an exciting new feature, and it's nice to have the visual component that goes with it. As a user, if there are 10 items in that feed, you could click see all, and you could look at all of the information at one time. So it's not limited to the 3 or however many we kind of program to be on that home page. And then scrolling down a little bit further, these are also quick links. It's find a department, and it is exactly what it says it is. If you click on the icon, it will take you to that department. And that's just a really easy, fast way. Right now, these are the departments we've defined and kind of identified as people wanting to access more than others, but we can change those depending on use, which we are able to monitor as well. So how often a link is used can be monitored. And then moving a little bit further down, this is also a new feature for this new website, take action. So something really fast. I just want to pay my bill. Where do I go? Just scroll down and click there, and we'll take you right to the website where you can make your utility payment online, which is extremely convenient. And again, these can be changed out just like the find a department. They're not set in stone, and depending on where we see the need, we can change that. One of the nice features here that we put in was sign up for notifications. So if you're interested in receiving information about a council agenda packet or a planning commission packet, again, the public won't see it like this. This is kind of the backside, so you see, oh, I can get a council agenda by text or by email. You won't see the page link, but when we update agendas, anybody who's signed up to receive changes to that page will receive a notification by email or by text, depending on what they choose. And then at the very end here, you know, the way this was kind of outlined for us when we started was that this was intended for exciting news. When Auto Expo comes to town, we put our information there and put a beautiful picture. But right now we just have city administration because we're not live and we don't have anything really fantastic right this very moment. Yeah, and then the very last thing you can see there, I maybe should have taken care of this earlier, is the edit alert. And while it is kind of an eyesore at the beginning, users will be able to shut it. But what's awesome about it is that it's just an at a glance, hey, this is important. 12th Street's going to be closed from this date to this date for these times. You can click on it, get more information. So we can put the things really that we're posting on social media that we're wanting to get out to the public immediately. This is the opportunity to do that right on the homepage. So with that, I will take us back up to the top. And I don't think that this is probably the right time or place to go through page by page, but I kind of just want to give you a feel for what's in there and just point out some of the really nice features that we didn't have before. Starting with your government, you can see everything that you would expect. Transparency, you can access Form 700s, information about ethics training. People can request on that page proof of training by elected officials if they contact our office. We have information about the city clerk, including agenda packets and minutes and voter election information. We made minor change to the council page, which is nice because previously we did not really allow a spot for council members to give a personal message, and now we really would like to, personalize this page and give you the opportunity to convey whatever brief message you would like on the page. So that's kind of a nice change. Whoops. And going back to your government, commissions and boards, you can see they're all laid out there. You can click on any one of them and obtain information about each one, as well as access an application, which, by the way, we are working on making all of the forms that are available on our website fillable. So you're not opening a copy of a scanned document. You're actually able to open it, fill it out, save it, and email it someplace where it can be received by city staff. So that in itself is a vast improvement. And then access to municipal code. This is a nice new feature. Public notices are nothing new, but what we've done here is we've actually categorized them so you can look for public notices based on public hearings, public works, community development, or the police department. And we may identify that we'll have to include some other categories, but right now these are the predominant type of public notices that we deal with. And going back to the homepage, so that's the government tab. Departments, really self-explanatory here. We looked at what we had laid out in the previous website. We worked with all city departments and kind of decided, we see a change in that we didn't refer to our police department as public safety previously. So there were some minor changes there, but really these are just links to the actual department. So unless somebody is dying to see something specific, I will keep going through the tabs at the top. And you'll notice there are some different pictures that we've put in there. We do have a default that came with the built site. We're trying to change that out to a city default, but this is a reflection of the type of picture we would want to include for the department to use. So this is a really nice reflection of our Parks Department, and that's what our intention would be for all of the departments moving forward. So continuing, this tab has a lot going on, but it says our community, and it is. It's a reflection of our community, it's for our community, and it's to get information about our community. So you see that first, Eat, Shop, Stay is the quick links tab where we use it for marketing and for tourists, and we use it for people who want to get information and to show all of the great things that Fortuna has to offer. And then we have, annual community events, and this kind of lays out all of the things that happen in Fortuna on an annual basis. I won't go too far down that road there. Consumer confidence report, documents and resources, Fortuna Volunteer Fire Department, recycling. These links take you directly to an external website. We are not experts on recycling, but Recology is. So it's much easier to give a link to somebody who has the information or a website that has the information opposed to trying to house all of that information in our own website. So moving on, I guess the other thing I would want to point out in this particular area is documents and resources. We have had document and resources before. They haven't quite been categorized quite like this. You can, search for a permit and it will give you a list of all of the types of permits that we have. And, again, not to get too far in the weeds of this, but we're still working out search terms and, which documents are pertinent under which heading, but the fact that you can just type the word and find all of the types of permits right there is, again, an improvement. It's an improvement. So, so then moving on to our last tab, unless there's anything in this column anybody wants to see. Okay, moving on to the last tab. This one's great. It's just transparency. Everybody wants to find agendas and minutes and packets and everything that goes with it. So what happens? We go there and you get to pick. Oh my goodness. I want to see council minutes and packets. Not a huge deal, but this is fantastic. So the links are going to live right in the dates with the minutes and the agendas, which it was accessible and is accessible through Access Humboldt as always, but the fact that the video is now going to live on the site right next to the meeting that it is applicable to is a really handy thing to have. So last column, this is it, I'll wrap it up. How do I? It's kind of like frequently asked questions, search for information all wrapped into one. So you can apply for obtain, and you can see right there all of the options that you have. And I won't go into clicking them because you can imagine they'll just take you to the page that allows you to access that information. But you can contact a city department, so you can go to ask the city, and it's a basic email contact. So if you have a general question, you could submit that for a staff response. You can also search for a staff member by name. You can read, view, or download any of those things. So agendas, packets, and minutes, building inspections and permits, the consumer confidence report. Again, that documents and resource tab may seem redundant, and I am not a fan of redundancy, but I will tell you this, if you see it in more than one place, it will always take you back to the same page. So even though you can access it in more than one spot, it's not living in multiple places on the website, which is part of the problem that we've had with our current website, is that you may find the same form in two different formats living on two different pages. There's just a lot. So this will always take you back to that same resource page where you can search for the documents and resources. And then there's Find, Learn About. This is just FAQs. So if you have questions about any of these things and you click on those links, it will take you to the pages that have the general information for those items. You can pay for a utility, and you can also get information for your water and sewer services here. Renting a facility or requesting a report. The last thing I would point out in this column is that you can also sign up for email notifications here. So not only through the quick link on the homepage, but in this location as well. And with that, I think that is maybe more than you bargained for, but it's a pretty good overview of where we're at. Again, just personalizing content, making sure the links work, making the forms fillable, making it fun and interesting, and wanting people to come back to get information. That's really what we're working on.
So, Sienna, do you have a plan as to who's going to maintain and make the changes? And like that one that you showed us, if you put in your email and ask a question, like who's going to respond? You have all that kind of
So
still
we
working on it or figured
it's
out?
actually going to be divided up somewhat amongst departments. So currently there is about 15 administrators. So if there's administrative staff in the Public Works Department, they kind of are the go-to for updates and oversight of emails like that. The same for Parks and Recreation. I think, myself and administrative department, Buffy and Becca will probably be predominant oversight and upkeep, but the small content information, pictures, current events, we're kind of putting that burden onto the department because they are best able to keep their content current. I just think, we're going to have to dedicate more time than we have in the past to this because we really want to keep it a viable tool, and whatever you get out of it, you have to put into it. So we recognize that, and I think we're just going to have to do audits to make sure the information stays as current as possible and that we don't start getting this buildup of redundant, outdated information again.
Anybody have any questions? No. Well, thanks for all your hard work.
Looks easy.
Yeah, just one comment too. Sienna's our city clerk, our human resources director, risk manager. She has a lot of things happening. So there's a lot that you can see that goes into this, and even more things, just the purge of things that are redundant or out of date or unnecessary, or the update of those old forms. So this is a huge effort, and that's why it's taken us a little longer. Initially, we wanted to have it done by the end of the year, but really trying to get this right and get the first, release something that is a quality product. And, this is really a lot of people's first impression of the city, whether it's a new business or somebody who's looking to relocate to the city of Fortuna, or even somebody who might want to come work at the city of Fortuna. Having an up-to-date website that really is a quality tool, it goes a long way to make that first impression. So I appreciate the effort of Sienna and staff who've been working on this, but it's a big effort, and we're excited to get this rolled out.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Erin. Our next item is to consider police department supplemental budget request for vehicle repairs.
So I'll be providing the staff report. Chief Downey's, he's out of the office this week for personal reasons. This is a fairly straightforward request. It's a request for additional budget in the amount of $15,000 to cover costs for vehicle repair that'll exceed the budgeted amount. The original budget amount for this item is $25,000, and the anticipated costs are, in the new budget request, are requesting the revised amount for this budget to be $40,000. The primary reasons have been accidents, a couple of collisions with deer, and then one collision between vehicles. If you do have questions about the nature of what we're experiencing, we have Lieutenant Eberhardt, and he could speak to those. But we typically budget for one of these type of repairs, but we got lucky and we had 3 this year, so more than we expected. The overage for this item will come from the general fund, and so staff's recommendation is for the approval of a supplemental budget request for vehicle repairs in the amount of $15,000.
Okay, any questions? Does anyone from the public have any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Make a motion to authorize the transfer of funds.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item is a public hearing to consider amendments to the Fortuna Municipal Code Title 17, zoning regulations, adding 17.06.184.5, ordinance short-term rentals, and this is the first reading.
So this is this ordinance is being brought to you. It's one of the planning priorities that was discussed at a recent workshop with the city council, and it was actually brought back, I believe, at one of the previous council meetings. And so this was one of the priorities. It wasn't as high as some of the other projects that we have that we're waiting for grant funds to use a consultant to do some of other more urgent planning priorities. But this is one that we thought staff could get done fairly quickly, and we were able to move this forward and found some good templates and took the time to move this forward. And so Liz Shorey, our Deputy Director of Community Development, will be providing the staff report.
Thanks, Merritt. Honorable Mayor and council members. So yeah, we're really happy to be bringing this to you. I know it's been brought up, say over the last year or so. And yeah, we've, looked at what other cities are doing, what is the common ways to respond to short-term rentals within a city. We looked at what other cities and the county are doing. And I think we had the workshop with the council in January and got some direction from you then. And then we did take this to the Planning Commission earlier in February. And they actually did look at a draft ordinance and made a recommendation, which is before you tonight. So short-term rentals, so they do exist in I think pretty much all of the cities in Humboldt County have a short-term rental ordinance, and the county has one as well. Couple, they can range from kind of more restrictive to more lenient. I think Trinidad has a pretty tightly controlled one, and then Arcadia and Eureka have some, solid standards in there. And then, the other cities, Ferndale, Rio Dell, I think that's it, Ferndale and Rio Dell, and the counties is pretty basic. So we kind of took direction from you at the workshop and created one that I think, the intent is to recognize short-term rentals by adopting an ordinance for one, and having some standards that protect the neighborhood as far as, noise and traffic and parking and things like that. So just to preserve the neighborhood character, and also to be able to, have a business license, collect TOT, and also to have enforcement ability. So if things do get out of hand, then at least the city has a method in place to enforce the city standards. So I did have a PowerPoint, but my laptop wasn't working, so I'll just go over this really quickly, and it's just kind of a general outline, and then going over the draft ordinance. Sorry, this is kind of getting a little noisy here on the mic. So the short-term rentals are renting out a furnished dwelling unit on a temporary basis. The code is 30 consecutive days or less to guests as an alternative to a hotel or other traditional temporary accommodations. And so that's within typically residential neighborhoods, and they're considered an accessory use to a home. So the residence is the primary use on the property. And then the unit, it can be shared either in part, like by renting out a bedroom or a guest house, attached or detached, or renting out the entire home. And it can be hosted where the occupant or the primary resident of the house stays on site, or they can leave while they're renting it out. Typically, the dwelling is the primary residence of the host or the property owner, or the owner does not reside at all on the site, and that's more of a vacation rental. And cities can restrict that or prohibit a complete rental of the house, on a regular basis. This draft ordinance doesn't do that, but it's something that some cities do that. And typically that's in high tourist areas where, they really get a huge influx of these short-term rentals, and it has a significant impact on their neighborhoods and a lot of, resident uproar and things like that. So Fortuna, we know that just by looking at the Airbnb and other websites, Fortuna does have short-term rentals, not a lot, but there are some, and that's the handout that I gave you that was in the PowerPoint. So you can see on that map that I gave you, there's not a lot here. The ones at the top of the map are in the county, like Palmer Creek area, to the north of the city, and then at the bottom of the map, I think that one might be in Alton, and then there are those three to the left by the river, those are actually in hotels, so they're advertising on Airbnb. So it's really just the central ones on that map. So, it's really just a handful that are at least advertising on Airbnb. It looks like there's like 6 to 10 within the city. So it has not come up as a problem in Fortuna, and we have not received any complaints, so we're not aware of any issues that have come up at this point. Just quickly, the pros and cons of a short-term rental. Arguments in support of a short-term rental, that they're a method of affordable and flexible accommodation for property owners to make a little bit of money with their house, and to accommodate visitors that are looking for an alternative to hotels. And they're becoming really popular now. A lot of people just go to Airbnb first thing when they're making plans to go out of town. So it's really something that's good for visitors, and to promote economic development through increased tourism. So, attracting people to the town when they're visiting Humboldt and they want a nice place to stay. And then, of course, collection of TOT, transient occupancy tax, which we are not doing now on Airbnbs. And, at least it's not a huge source of general fund income for the city, but at least it creates, I think, a sense of fairness with the hotels that other, rental facilities like this are paying the same TOT that the hotels are paying. And then other arguments against short-term rentals is that they can affect the neighborhood's character, where long-term neighbors are replaced by short-term guests, so that can affect a neighborhood when people are, rotating through the house and not being stable long-term residents. There's potential for nuisances, noise, parking and traffic, and then also there can be an impact on the housing stock when rental units are removed from long-term housing market and replaced by, just tourists and short-term overnight rentals. But I do think that we've made a good, in the standards, the proposed standards, I think we've made an effort in moving forward on protecting the neighborhoods with a proposed draft ordinance. So the proposed regulations, I'll go over them to, just in summary. They're principally permitted in all residential zones. They're allowed in commercial zones, the commercial thoroughfare, retail commercial, which is the downtown area, and neighborhood commercial, and they're not permitted in the public facility or the industrial zones. Permit requirements would be the business license, which is required for all businesses in the city, transient occupancy tax, and then the short-term rental permit, which is really just a pretty brief, especially compared to what I've seen in other cities. It's a pretty straightforward, feasible. Notice there's no cover on this mic, so that's why it's making that noise, so I apologize. But I can see that there's no foam cover. Anyway, so the short-term rental permit is really just an application form with the basic information, a local contact person, and then a site plan, a simple, easy to prepare site plan that would just show the layout and the bedrooms and the parking area. Building inspection, which would be fire and building department, and that would just be an initial inspection. Some cities require an annual inspection, but we're keeping it simple at this point and just having an initial inspection. A basic review fee, and then proof of insurance. The code is broken down into some health and safety standards and then operational standards. And the health and safety standards are, obviously to protect the occupants of the facility, so that, there's just really basic fire protections and first aid and identifying egress, an emergency exit, and smoke detector, CO detector, and fire extinguisher. So just to make sure that those basic things are there in case of an emergency. And then the operational standards include occupancy not to exceed 2 persons per bedroom plus an additional 3 persons. And I know we talked about this at the workshop, finding a way to allow more occupants, in situations where, it might be a large house, might be a large property. So what we did was worked into it flexibility where the city manager can approve a higher occupancy if the conditions of that property do accommodate it. So that would be on a case-by-case basis. And kind of the same thing with parking. The draft has a standard for 1 additional off-street parking. So in addition to the 2 that are required for the house, for the residents, there would be 1 additional off-street parking space for each bedroom. And then again, the city manager would have the ability to approve a waiver of the parking standards, in unique conditions or, conditions relating to the site, where they may have extra parking on the site through, extra yard area or gravelled area or extra street frontage. It's really hard to, I think it's kind of impossible to create standards for every possible scenario out there. And I know that we want some flexibility for different types of situations. And then the other operational standards are kind of really basic, that there's no accumulation of trash, that proper containers are on site, and also a standard to ensure that there's weekly trash pickup. We talked about a good neighbor flyer, and that would be information relating to the operation of the site and certain city standards that would be submitted with the application and then left in a conspicuous space at the site and within the rental unit. And that would have things like just information on maximum occupancy, noise and use restrictions, how to handle the trash, who the local contact person is, evacuation routes, and health and safety standards and things like that.
So Liz, on that one, you have a good neighbor flyer, and then you said prepared by the Community Development Department. But then you just said that the owner would give you that information. I got a little
I
lost
think
there.
yeah, we talked about that, and we want the renter to be responsible for it, so we could have a basic form, but we want to be able to review it and maybe have, the ability to add standards based on that site. So.
So maybe reviewed by the Community Development
Yeah.
Department rather than prepared by,
Yeah.
okay. That makes me happier.
That was one of my
Too.
concerns as well. You could say approved instead of reviewed, because reviewed.
Okay, which way? Yeah, okay. Okay,
Let's see, no signage allowed in residential districts. Use restrictions, that is regarding large events at the site, and that those would not be allowed. So a renter may not use a short-term rental for purpose not associated with its lodging or sleeping purposes. And that would include such as weddings, banquets, receptions, parties, concerts, fundraisers, sponsored events, or any similar group activity. And that's to protect the neighborhood. And then the Planning Commission added a couple of things. One is that the insurance include that the underwriter notify the city if the insurance is canceled. And, that's to make sure that they keep insurance in place. And it also creates where the city doesn't have to do the research, and check each year or whatever. And it's something that we know that it's a really simple process because we do receive that kind of notification for other types of permits in the city. So the insurance company or the underwriter will, when a policy is canceled, they just have the address of any parties that are listed that we would get a notice that has been canceled.
and Liz, I don't
Yeah.
see that in here, but how much insurance are we requiring? Do we have an amount, or is it just whatever their homeowners, what are we?
Yeah, we don't know that yet because it's kind of that kind of insurance hasn't been around very long, so it's actually not something that, I think that's a good question. And we should have some kind of I think this might be something that we might bring back at the second reading. Okay. I know that in talking to insurance agents, they do write that policy, and it's available. That kind of insurance is available, but I think that not all the insurance companies are comfortable with it, or it hasn't been around long enough. But the internet platforms like Airbnb are creating their own insurance that the residents can use. So let me get back to you at the second reading. I think that's something that we can add without renoticing or anything. And then just the last few, the other operational standards, the no signage, the use restrictions, and then the Planning Commission talked about grandfathering in the existing short-term rentals just for 120 days, where the city wouldn't go out and enforce them, would give them some time to comply with the standards. And then there's the enforcement section, which is for violations, $250 per day for the first violation, $500 per day for the second violation, and $750 for the third violation. And then after that, fourth violation, the city manager could revoke the permit. And that's it on the standards. I do have, for the PowerPoint, I did have the public notice. We did outreach for the Planning Commission meeting as well as this one, but we did reach out to a list of all of the local real estate agencies, property management agencies in Fortuna, and then other types of agencies and other related kind of land use and land management agencies in Eureka. So we didn't get a huge turnout at the Planning Commission meeting, but there were some, and they had some questions and comments and good input. I think they seemed pretty satisfied with the city's, kind of understood just the purpose of it.
So I had another question. So they're going to get a business license, which those fees are set by income. And then you talked about a permit. Is there another permit fee that's going to be added on there?
Our basic planning, our zoning review fee is $100.
So that would
Yeah,
be
we would apply it to this one.
Any other questions for Liz?
Just have a couple of comments. I like the way you called out the contact person, and not to just be able to call them, but that they are to be able to respond and take action, because a contact person, you say, okay, we'll deal with it, and then you never see them again. So that's good. And last year, it seemed like the second half of the year, there was a never-ending cascade of parties in Airbnbs and large events and all kinds of problems. And with the restrictions on use, people are able to keep a neighborhood as a neighborhood even if there is a short-term rental in it. So I like the way you covered those two things.
Yeah, and we don't want to exclude events coming to Fortuna, but we want to protect neighborhoods. So there's other venues where they can have those kinds of events.
Is there a way to contact the current ones in town to let them know that we have an ordinance?
That's really hard to do because they don't list the address on the platform. But we did. One of them even came to the meeting, so we were able to get their address. And we didn't. I don't think we hit them all, but there were a couple of them. And then we hoped that through the property managers. We know that several of those are managed by the local management agencies, and I think the other person who attended was a manager. So and
Questions?
And one of our goals too was really to give people a path. Sorry, Councilmember Stanfield. Just one of our goals was to give people a path forward. We heard from a number of property owners over a period of time that, hey, I'd really like to do this. I'd like to pay my tax. I'd like to get the permit, and we didn't have a response. So that was another reason why this was moved forward. It seemed like there was a demand and a desire from property owners to be able to do this activity. So that was one of the reasons we did push this forward.
Jeremy, you had questions?
Yeah, I have a question about what's the city's exposure regarding insurance? Why do we have to carry proof of insurance? I mean, I'm a month-to-month landlord, and I don't have to do any of these things, so I feel like this is a little bit overbearing for a short-term rental landlord on some of these items. So I'm curious to know what our exposure is and why it's necessary for us to be notified whether or not an individual carries insurance or not.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think the purpose is liability as far as the city goes, but to protect you know, the property owner and the neighbors, just to make sure that if there are any issues, that some, you know, that there's a way that that's going to be protected to some degree, at least financially. So say there's a dog bite, you know, in the neighborhood, that there's a way, or whatever, kind of a tree falls on, I don't know, you know, that the neighbors are protected and that you know, the visitors are protected.
So I guess I appreciate the intent, but that feels like an overreach of a municipality, in my opinion. But, I mean, that person that's taking on that risk of having a short-term rental, seems to me that would be wise to protect themselves, but why is it our duty to make sure they do that?
Yeah, I mean, the only other reason, I have heard stories of the guests who, you know, something gets damaged of theirs, like their car or something, and the renter, the host or the landlord, you know, doesn't take care of whatever, you know, harm was done. So it's like, oh, that's your problem, not mine. So, I mean, there's a lot more reasons that, but that's one that I have seen, that it can protect the property of the guest.
What is under item 2-G, what is a standard lease for the unit?
And,
33.
yeah, that was actually something that the other thing that the planning commission added, and the lease, I think their intent was just that the lease represents, it's kind of like the good neighbor policy in a way, where it just represents the terms for
Page 33.
the guests.
So is that like just screenshot Airbnbs?
It's just their basic lease.
Okay. Is that all that's going to be required of the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's with the application. So they would just show their standard lease, and it's part of their paperwork.
And then kind of piggyback to your question about an application fee. Again, I feel like we're kind of overburdening these people that are charging $130 to every year pay a permit fee.
It's
We're
just
not
once.
gonna-
It's just the one-time application fee.
It's not an annual? Okay,
The business license is annual.
okay.
The TOT is.
So my take on the permit fee is it's going to cover the building official going out to
Yeah.
do the initial inspection to make sure everything is safe, is kind of what, and to process their permit and do all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and again, I agree with the idea, but I don't know, I don't have to have a building official show up to my rental to be a long-term landlord. So why are we putting these extra burdens on these short-term rental landlords? I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way. On page 34, F2-A, the additional parking, I thought we kind of talked about that, saying that, you know, if it was a long-term rental, then there's going to be family and members of the family that already have extra vehicles. I wasn't sure. What's the protocol that will allow the city manager to make an exception? And is it, I mean, I'm trying to save you from setting precedents in one instance, and then the next time it doesn't work for the next person, and it's either we have a standard or we don't, but this out seems like it just puts you guys in a sticky situation.
Well, it seemed like a lot of parking. Typically, people come into town, well, this is my experience, maybe this isn't typical. So if you go in a group, you rent a car, so you have one rental car. If your group is huge, you might have two rental cars. But if you come in a family, you have one car. And so now we're saying if it's a two-bedroom house, you're going to have 4 parking spaces. And it doesn't seem like somebody coming and renting an Airbnb is going to bring 4 vehicles.
You know, I think that's a judgment call. I mean, there's 2 approaches. This one could be protective or overly protective, and I think this one, you know, if you look at a typical 2-bedroom house in the city, a lot of them don't have 4 parking spaces. You know, so, you know, the approach here is probably one that's more conservative and protective. You know, another approach would be to not include the additional parking spot, see how it goes, and see if we get complaints, and then revise the ordinance if we start seeing complaints. So this one errs aside of being more protective, but again, it would probably eliminate a number of people from considering it. It's difficult to add additional parking spots. And I think, having been to a number of these myself, a lot of times on-street parking is relied upon. And so I think on this one, it's a judgment of council. And
Well, for instance, like, okay, I have a 3-bedroom house. I have 2 parking places technically in my driveway. My driveway is long, so I can get more in there. But you're saying that we have to have 2 because we have a house, and now we have 3 bedrooms, so now we have to have 5 parking places. Most people don't have 5 parking places in their driveway or they're across their front of their property.
yeah, no, understood. It's about approach. I don't know, Liz. if you
Yeah,
comment on
what
that.
some cities do is if it's the whole house that's rented out, they have a different parking standard than if it's a house, where the renter, the host is going to be on site. So that's where they would need their own 2 spaces, and then you would need additional parking. So it kind of, if they're going to rent out the whole house, then they do have at least 2 spaces in the driveway. So there can be a different standard in those two scenarios.
So I understand that this is to, I guess, if there's a complaint, you have teeth to make a judgment call on this, and I appreciate that part of it, but I don't want this to deny an applicant.
Or for people to read it and think they can't do it because they don't have this much parking available on their lot.
What if instead of having 4 additional parking besides the 2 you have for a 4-bedroom house, if it's a 4-bedroom house, you have 4 parking spots? And that includes however much you have off-street and on the front. A 2-bedroom house only needs 2 parking spots. Just go like that instead of the ones off plus an additional. Would that sound?
1 for 1 sounds like it's more easily attainable when you're considering the application process. Like I said, I appreciate that it's there so that if there's bad actors, we've got teeth to do something about it. I just don't want that to eliminate anybody that either already has an Airbnb that bought it specifically for that purpose and now they don't qualify, or that an applicant doesn't even try to do that and be in compliance with the ordinance because they know they can't meet the standard.
Yeah, I think 1 space per bedroom is reasonable because typically those 2 people are going to drive together. It's usually a couple.
Yeah.
It's just when, there's like a lot of extra people and they need to scatter around the house, but that's not as common.
So a 3-bedroom, you could use the 2 parking spaces in their driveway and 1 additional street parking?
Especially if it's an entire house, that's not going to be a problem.
The biggest problem would probably come in when someone has a 3-bedroom house with their family in it, and then with 2 drivers, 3 drivers, and then they rent out the ADU. So it's not going to come in very often, I don't think. The one time I stayed in a place, we had 4 families with 4 vehicles, but it was a rural out in the country and had a huge place to park. But most of the time, I can just see with an ADU, it popping up. Because you've got a family with the drivers that live there, plus the little rental house in the back. And that's what one of them is right here in town, is an ADU.
So I'd like to see that part changed myself, to be 1 vehicle per bedroom.
I will agree.
Makes perfect sense.
One of the things we could do, this is very specific and it's something that's easy to count for staff, but one of the things that might take some interpretation, there'd be some subjectivity for a while, is that the applicant could demonstrate that there's suitable parking, for the short-term rental, and we could put that in there and leave it subjective for a while and have them submit and demonstrate that, whatever that might be. It could be a combination of on and off street if we wanted to go something that was less than specific.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
could
we
just-
should still have the flexibility to add parking if warranted, because in looking at the Airbnbs, I'm not sure if these are in the county or if they're like maybe in the hillside area, but they're on the border where there's, large lots, and they clearly have ample parking to accommodate whatever size of group that they're going to rent to.
So could we move the parking under number 4 as part of our Good Neighbor flyer? That's something that they have to include in their application, and with all of this other, like, location of off-street parking, kind of, it's there. Can we just leave it there, and then maybe reword that so it's location of ample off-street parking or something, or just parking, not off-street parking necessarily, but,
Say
Oh.
Demonstration
Parking.
of ample parking.
yeah.
And so then it's subjective, but perhaps they live on an alley and there's no parking spaces and they don't have a driveway, or there's a one-spot driveway, we might want to look at that one closer, but if they have to demonstrate it, we could choose to count the on-street or off-street. It's subjective, it's gonna, could create, problems with staff, but again, I think we have a dozen or so of these, and, I don't think we're gonna see that many conflicts, and I don't think we're gonna see that many applications, but this would be somewhere where we could come back and tighten it up if we're starting to see problems.
I got one more.
Go
Page 35, under item G and number 1, my only concern there was provide access to each short-term rental to the building official at any time. I just caution that we should probably have our attorney look at that for what's required for notice.
Remind me which number, so we did have the city attorney review this, and he didn't.
G1 on page 35. It says at any, or specifically,
So do you take objection or exception to the at any time during normal business rental hours?
that's
Or
my only concern, is that, like, as a landlord, I have to give a 24-hour notice to enter my.
So we should say
property.
upon request and maybe leave it open there, but at any given time during normal business hours. I mean, if the building official, if he has some question about health or safety of occupancy, they have the right to enter a building and red tag it. So I think they already have the jurisdiction if they have concern that there's
Okay.
a safety issue.
Mine was just more or less legalese, and I just wanted to make sure that he took a look at that. But I'm fine with whatever the attorney's suggestion is.
Yeah, and I don't think, he did review it and didn't take exception, but if you thought that that's going to be too onerous of a requirement, we could say upon request.
No, it was more or less just trying to keep us from doing anything illegal.
Okay.
Well, I had a question on that same one, though. It says for the purpose of inspection or audit, what is the building official going to be auditing?
I suppose it could be occupancy, or it could be a different type of use, perhaps somebody's renting it for a different type of use. Or how many people would be in there.
And was it intentional to say 250 per day or 250 per incident? 250, 500, and 750? Was that literally supposed to be a per day charge? I mean, that's some pretty steep
I think that's what our,
consequences, which I'm not opposed to making sure people take us seriously, but wow.
If they don't have a fire extinguisher,
Yeah.
or they've got more people in there than the fire department authorized,
You want 250 per day till they're in compliance? Like I said, that's one that I'll leave it. I just making sure that wasn't, if that was its original intent, I'm fine with it.
So when we can bring it back and check and make sure that that's consistent with the other municipal code violation fees, which I think are 500. I don't remember it being 750 for the third, but I don't have that off the top of my head, but I'll double check to make sure it's consistent with the other municipal code violation fees. Or fines.
typically we, do a verbal, then we do written warnings, so it takes a while before it gets to an actual enforcement like
Okay.
that.
And we'll double check and I think it's less than that. I think right now it's like $100 and then it goes to up to $5, but we'll make sure that that's consistent.
Okay.
Just one other question, Councilmember Stanfield, you made a comment about the building inspector. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, G1.
page 35.
Oh, so the signature of the building inspector and fire chief that the site has been inspected and meets the health and safety requirements. So that was one you had a question. So your question really, is that something that's necessary for this ordinance on page 33 of the packet? Roman numeral I sub bullet 8.
Which is it?
Signature of the building inspector and fire chief that the site has been inspected and meets health and safety requirements.
Okay.
You raised that, but I wasn't sure, was your question just, is that necessary to have?
I mean, I appreciate we're trying to keep people safe, and it's the standard that a hotel would have to meet.
Mhm.
I just didn't understand why it doesn't apply to a long-term landlord when it applies to these folks. And again, this is just them protecting themselves, but is it our job to protect them from themselves?
Okay, so we'll consider that one when we bring this back, if there needs to be a modification. Otherwise, we'll leave it as is.
Okay.
Well, and the other one was the insurance. I'm still not really satisfied with that one. Do other cities or counties or whatever have insurance requirements? I don't
Yeah,
remember seeing
it's
that.
somewhat common.
It's common?
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
And it doesn't state a level of insurance, which is, you could
But
have,
it's kind of still like, how does the city get sued?
I don't think-
What's our liability? Back to that question. I don't know what that is.
right? And I don't think we have direct liability. I think it's us, I think it's an assurance that we're trying to protect the public but I don't think the city's in the direct line of liability. Again, that's something that can run by our attorney and ask for input on that one. Is the council's desire, if it's not necessary and we don't specify limits, to remove it? Or is the council inclined a particular direction with that?
Well, it's just more for us to track and more for us to do
Right.
if we don't need to do it, or I don't know. It just seems,
So remove if there's no benefit or not a requirement.
I'd say yes.
Be something to have risk management look at, because if you're issuing a permit to somebody to operate a business and saying it meets a level of criteria, and somebody gets injured and the person doesn't have adequate insurance, they may approach the permitting authority for
Then that,
damages.
that would pertain to every single business in town then.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Jeremy's throwing
No, I-
stuff out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the
Let's just throw
perspective,
some
but I
stuff
didn't
out
think of that,
We're sued on things all the time, whether.
so, whether it's our fault.
But yeah, definitely, this is something I'll look at with our risk manager. We'll bring that back to the attorney and we'll either clarify that or see if we have potential to remove it when we bring it back for the next reading.
I'm looking at it from the area of encroachment permits and that kind of thing.
No, understood. I mean, there definitely are concerns. We want to keep the city out of a liability situation, but we also don't want to ask for something, that could have such low limits and would have no benefit at all anyway. So we want to make sure if it's there, it's needed and useful. So understood.
I think that the people would want to protect themselves. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, they would be crazy not to have insurance.
any more questions? Okay, does anyone from the public have any comments at this time? Well, you're not sitting in your usual place and you're just throwing me.
I did that on purpose. I just have a question. I haven't read this, and I'm not involved in it really. Does this agreement require that the city be named as an additional insured on these insurance policies? Because if it doesn't, then it's an exercise in futility. Anyway, yes.
I don't believe it does, so.
We don't know because we don't have any insurance information in our thing. That's what we're trying to figure out.
No, it's not asking that the city be an additional insured.
So the provision on page 33, number 6, insurance, the property owner shall maintain on file at the city an up-to-date certificate of insurance documenting that the dwelling is insured as a short-term rental. And that's all it says, so it's vague.
Okay.
So there's
Well-
no protection there.
It does not say to list the city as an additional insured.
If the city's not named as an additional insured and there's not an endorsement that changes the policy, it wouldn't apply to the city anyhow. It would have to be very specific. That certificate could exist and it could protect that homeowner, but if somebody wanted to sue the city, we couldn't say, oh, we have this certificate saying we're covered, because we wouldn't be without that endorsement.
Thank you. Thanks, Walt. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
My name is Mike Reinman, from Arcata, and I had a business called Redwood Coast Vacation Rentals. We managed about 145 houses or so. We recently sold to a company called Vacasa, who's a national company. And we do have a couple houses here in Fortuna that we've been working with. And we haven't taken on any more. We've been asked, but we haven't until an ordinance ordinance was put in place because we weren't comfortable doing it. But I do think that this is definitely a great step in the right direction. I think the points that you folks brought up were excellent points. There probably could be some adjustments, but I think in general it's a really good ordinance. I've been involved in this industry for 15 years. I've worked on the Trinidad one, the Arcata one, which didn't happen, the Eureka one, and the county, Humboldt County, which doesn't. Humboldt County has an ordinance, but you have to be Zone V for vacation rental, and the only houses that are Zone V for vacation rental are the ones that weren't built in Shelter Cove. So currently, there really isn't an active ordinance at the county level. So you're ahead of the county on this, which is great. So I think it is some of the points that you brought up. One of the things is interesting is minimum number of nights. So if somebody's going to do it for, say, 2 weeks, like they're just going to do it for HSU graduation and another rodeo week or something like that, they're just going to do it for, or maybe the fair also, so maybe they'll do it for 2 weeks or 14 or 15 days total in the year. Would they require one or not? Something to consider. The other thing also is on the insurance. So I own some vacation rentals also. The insurance can be a challenge. Typically, it's 40 to 50% higher, that homeowner's insurance, with a much higher deductible. So instead of a $200 or $250 deductible, it can easily be a $1,000 deductible. Also, dog bites a lot of times are not covered under those policies. So it really depends. It does get down to the details. A company like maybe State Farm, I think they'll allow people to do it up to 52 nights on their current policy. Otherwise, it's considered a different use. So those are things to think about. I would say two things. One is, like, one of the things that Vacasa does and that Redwood Coast Vacation Rentals did as well is the renters have to sign an agreement as to that they have read all the rules and they agree to all the rules. And we actually had it sign it where they had to initial every line of that as well. And it's all done digitally through, DocuSign. That is a nice thing to have, and that way if the city ever required it, we always had that on file as well. And then also if the renters did not follow some of the things, like if it was a no pet house and they decided to bring a pet, we could show them where they did sign it and they were wrong. I would say too, and this is, you guys are small, there's 10 or 12 or something here, but it might grow some. In terms of responsibility. So I think the person that owns the property or who's managing the stay, who's hosting it, they're going to have the people sign these agreements and tell them the rules. And a lot of times we'll meet them at the house. Actually, we have an area property manager who lives here in Fortuna. So a lot of times she'll meet the people at the property. However, sometimes you do all that and they'll still break the rules. Doesn't happen much, but people do that sometimes. The one thing I would ask is that think about a way to penalize those people who broke the rules. That's a challenge, right? I don't think it's going to happen much or whatever, but it does, So typically the host will have a security deposit, and they could then keep that security deposit or something like that. We do that where if there was a fine because they were too loud or something like that, and then that money will go to pay the city for that fine if that happens. So, like I said, this is small. I don't think you have those issues, but I've got PTSD from dealing with Trinidad. I'll own some there. And it was really interesting because Arcata decided not to do an ordinance. They said, basically, we don't have a problem. We don't need an ordinance. And that was amazing because it was at the city council level. And it was really good to hear. And they have over 100 vacation rentals. So it's very, very different. But yeah, I think the one thing about if someone just wants to do it for a few weeks or 2 weeks or something like that, do you want them to go through this? That's something to consider. And I do think if you're hosting within your house, a bedroom in your house, that is a different scenario than if they're renting the whole property. But thank you very much for your time, and I'm really glad you're taking this step. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. So any comments based on the speaker's suggestions? That was interesting. I hadn't thought about just a short time rodeo, auto expo. Do we have any thoughts on that?
Well,
If it was just, that would probably just be a in your house one, that wouldn't be a whole I would think that somebody, if they were just renting it for 1 or 2 times a year, it would be a bedroom in their house.
I could see somebody wanting to do that for graduation, high school graduation.
So you're thinking typically they wouldn't have a vacant house that sat there all year and then only for 2 weeks they would. So we don't need to really worry about that.
There's already people when high school graduation happens that has cousins and grandpas and that max a house out.
I hate to play devil's advocate, but if I was that person that was only going to rent my house out for 2 weeks, I'd probably wait to get caught instead of ask for permission. Just being truthful about it.
I don't think I'd have a house that sat vacant for 50 weeks a year.
Right.
And only rent it twice either.
No. But I appreciate the perspective though, because we don't do this all the time, so I'm glad you spoke.
Yeah, and that's one where people just do it a few times. There are people that just leave their house, they live there, and they'll travel just for those big times, you know? Or they might just go away for a week or two in the summer and rent their house as a vacation rental just for that week or two. Put all their stuff in the garage and lock it up. That is fairly common. Yeah, that's something that people will probably see. It's probably happening already.
So I don't think that's something that we want to worry too much about at this point.
I don't think so.
anyways. Okay. If they want to pack up their whole house, put it in their garage, and be gone for 2 weeks, whatever.
There's people that actually swap houses. Say you've got
Yeah.
relatives in
Yeah.
Arizona and they've got friends here and they'll just trade houses.
Yeah, we don't want to get into all that. Way too much.
One thing I will say, Mayor Long, is that if we do end up making significant revisions to this, we may have to do another first reading, but we're willing to look into these changes from the council and bring them back.
I think we'd rather have to do another first reading and get it right than to just,
Okay, so then,
Rush through it.
and the motion would be to continue this to March 16th.
instead of doing the first reading, we'll just continue it.
Yes.
That make more sense? Okay,
Do you need a motion to that effect?
we do.
I'll make a motion to continue the first reading to the March 16th meeting.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to hold the first reading of ordinance 2020-742 on March 16th rather than tonight, so we are continuing it to that date. And you'll bring us back all the answers to our questions.
Great.
Okay, is that a voice vote, Tiana, or a roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
And I would say that if Planning Commission has some different opinions on that they want to enlighten us, I want to hear why they made some of those recommendations, if they want to come back to the next reading.
I can let them know.
Okay.
We have a meeting next week, and
Because
I'll,
I don't want to micromanage a commission,
yeah.
I appreciate their efforts, but I also want to hear their perspective so that I understand where they were.
Yeah, I'll
coming from.
just give them a report on tonight's meeting.
Okay.
Well, I think that we like 90% of it, so I think that's
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
good.
absolutely, yeah. I just don't ever want anybody to think that they're not appreciated for the
Hey, they get $30 a meeting. Don't
Oh.
you think that's appreciating them?
And it really seems like those comments, the ones that were a little more, questionable, were ones that they were trying to be protective of the city. It seemed like, that was the intention.
Okay,
So that's a good thing.
yeah.
All right, moving on to our next item is a mayor appointment to a historical commission. And this one made me really happy. Sienna, are you talking about this? Okay.
Yes, so one of the 5 historical commission seats are vacant, is vacant as of December 31st, and the city has received an application from Doug Strell. The term is for 3 years, and if appointed, will expire on December 31st, 2022. So I am pleased to recommend approval for the appointment of Doug Strell to the Fortuna Historical Commission.
So, does anyone have any comments?
I do. I think that particular seat should sit right next to Mike as a historian.
Yes. Well, he was actually here first, so maybe I should move.
Oh.
Do you want to say anything, Doug? All right, well, I would like to appoint Doug to this position, so if someone would make a motion to that effect, that would be, oh, does anyone from the public want to say anything? No? Okay, we'll close public comment.
I make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Doug Strell to the Historical Commission.
Second.
This is a roll call.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Very
Mayor Long.
pleased to say yes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yes,
Mayor Long.
and thank you, Doug, for stepping up and staying involved. We appreciate it. We missed you. Okay, our next item is actually not an item because it was listed as A and D, so we're just going to cross that one off and move on to our city manager's report.
Okay, first I'd like to review the upcoming meeting schedule. Our next council meeting will be on March 16th. Our next planning commission, and that'll be 6 o'clock, the regular time. Our next planning commission is March 10th at 6 o'clock PM in council chambers. Our next Measure E meeting coming up is March 17th. That's a significant meeting. We'll be going through all of the projects from the public and all of the projects from staff. And so the Measure E committee will have a chance to review all of those funding suggestions and requests. And our next Roner Community Recreation Park District meeting is on March 4th, also here in the City Council chambers. I have a few items to report for my verbal report. One is that we did conduct interviews for the vacant police chief position. We decided not to move forward with any of the candidates that were interviewed. So our intention at this time is to do one more advertisement locally. Hopefully that will be successful, and we'll see some more candidates. But if not, then we'll be coming back to council thinking about a more aggressive recruitment strategy. I'm close to finishing the conceptual design. We've been looking at the reuse of the building at 2600 Newburgh Road and the purchase of that property, and I expect to bring that back at the March 16th meeting. We were hoping to have it tonight, but we were unable to get to it in time for this council meeting. Some bad news, I guess, is we didn't receive our Prop 68 grant. We had a number of public outreach meetings and a really nice master plan that we developed for Newburgh Park, and we put in a grant for about $7.4 million. And we were really disappointed to find out that we didn't get that. What we did get out of that project was a wonderful master plan that we got a lot of community input on, and so that is really going to help us with some of the direction. So we'll be looking at other ways to complete the park expansion using some of the Prop 68 per capita money that's going to be coming through and other improvement projects, but it's not going to be anywhere near the level and that it would have been with that grant. We will keep trying. I think one of the things that is difficult is they look at the demographics of a certain area closest to the park and they judge the need by the demographics in a small circle right around the park. And I think one of the things that gets lost in those type of criteria is that, parks like Newburgh Park that serve an entire community such as the Eel River Valley and other communities such as Rio Dell where they don't have parks like that, and they'll bring their kids, or Scotia, and I think that we don't get the kind of credit we should in a grant. But they also, the grant judges, they have a lot to consider, and grants from up and down the state. So we're happy to see at least one was going to Eureka. Would have been their 2030 park grant application was successful for a little over $6 million. Would have loved to have seen it in Fortuna, but at least Humboldt County is going to see some of that money. I attended the chamber dinner last Thursday. There was a packed audience with many of our businesses and elected officials represented, and there were a lot of awards. But one of them I thought that was particularly important to note tonight was that Enoch Cabrera, who serves as our volunteer crime prevention specialist, was honored as Volunteer of the Year. And Enoch works very, very hard. He organizes a disaster fair, assists with crime prevention throughout the community and neighborhood watch program. He really does a lot for the city, and it was nice to see him recognized as a volunteer for the year. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Council reports. Mike, you're up.
It's funny having an empty seat down there.
I know.
Well, there was no historical commission meeting last month, but there will be one next week. Doug's first opportunity to sit on the commission. You've attended many of them already, so I think you know the format. Last month, I did attend the HCOG meeting, and there was an update on the last chance grade and the safety corridor. The Last Chance grade, they finished the first round of the drilling, and they're getting ready for the second phase, and this one is going to be real challenging. They are going to be helicoptering equipment to the sites and doing the drilling that way. And this also, they just let a contract for the, I think it's the preliminary environmental on that project, and that's going to be a big thing to do. On the safety corridor, they just redesigned the supports for the overpass, and how also the sub drains, wick drains for the approaches on both sides. And they think that they will be able to actually make up some time on that, and they're researching a way to work on that while traffic is still on part of the roadway. So it'll be interesting. They have the mitigation set a budget for that, and we'll be able to get started on that earlier than they thought too. So hopefully this will all get done. And they are looking and accelerating the work on Last Chance grade to get it done quickly, because they realize that that is not a freeway such as in other areas, but that is a transportation corridor for Northern California and Southern Oregon. So it's a regionally significant project, and the state is taking that seriously. And I was also able to attend the chamber dinner, and I second Enoch's congratulations, as well as Dave Morris and Moonlight Catering as the Small Business of the Year. And I won't do it all because there's a lot of other people following behind. So I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Let's see. I had the opportunity to go to the REDEC meeting as the alternate for Mayor Long, and I really, really like that group. So I think I might be doing a little bit more tagging along on that one, because it's really fascinating to see all the parts, all the moving parts in the county. During the individual reports, at the meeting, they talked about several of the loans that they were working on. One was a big payoff that put some money back in the coffers to have the opportunity to reinvest. Another thing was that our executive director, Greg, was named to the California Association of Local Economic Development Legislative Action Committee. So he's going to be able to bring the rural perspective to that committee and make sure that our small voice is heard throughout the state, which is very impactful. They're going to be starting the budget for next fiscal year in March. There'll be a presentation for that. And then there's going to be a new survey done at the terminal for the airport by HSU students with iPads for they're going to be interviewing passengers as they get off the airplane and see how they feel the Eureka Arcata Airport is performing. So hopefully while they're waiting for their luggage, they can take a few minutes to give their feedback and their input, hopefully to improve that air service satisfaction with our local regional carriers. And then on the regional reports, it seemed like the theme of the night was everybody's looking into sewer issues and upgrades. I think everybody but one was talking about that as a concern in their districts or their cities or towns. We mentioned it was timely that we just had our presentation with GHD at our last council meeting, and we were talking about the things that we have to overcome between now and 2024. And it seemed like the next person spoke about the same thing, and the next person spoke about the same thing. So it is an issue that's going to be in our face for several years to come. Ferndale is considering making a sewer and water rate increase, or not a water, excuse me, a sewer increase. They have a private water supplier. I want to give them a little bit of a pat on the back. They recently hosted a fundraiser at the community center to support homeless CR students. So I thought that was really neat that that community was willing to step up and do something to impact those students' lives. CR spoke about the need of a police chief, so they said, back off, Fortuna, you can't have our candidates. They talked about bolstering up the RN program there. And then they're going to have a dedication of lands on the edges of the campus to the Wiyot tribe tomorrow, I believe. No, excuse me, March 4th, so this Wednesday. They're going to be doing that in conjunction with the Wiyot tribe. Lastly, CR is going to be hosting a disaster summit on April 12th at College of the Redwoods, and I'll bring back more specific dates and times, or one of us will at the next meeting. And then finally, Humboldt Community Services District mentioned a conversation that they're having about discounts for hookups to ADUs. The fees needed to hook up to accessory dwelling units was something they're considering in their district. So beyond that, had an opportunity to participate at the chamber dinner, and congratulations to all the honorees. I think that the chamber did an outstanding job selecting their recipients of their awards. Went to the Gene Lucas Community Center on Saturday. And there was a whole program of self-guided tours starting at 2, several musical and dance performances by local artists and schools, which was pretty neat. The McLean Foundation had a 20th anniversary celebration at 3, and then they had a cornerstone ceremony with the Masons of the Eel River Valley. And included a time capsule that they're going to put inside that cornerstone monument that will be there for the next 10 years. So it'll be pretty fascinating to see from that vision what it's going to look like 10 years from now moving forward. I attended a coffee with the chief last, I think it was on the 20th. Don't scratch him, you can say it too. I'm really, really impressed with the 12th Street paving, and I think that all the citizens of Fortuna will appreciate the small sacrifice we had to make of going down those bumpy roads for the finished product, and I appreciate the staff making that happen for us, and it seemed to go really seamlessly over those 2 days, so kudos to you and your staff on that. And then yesterday, Fortuna's Business Improvement District had a home-based business expo at the Monday Club, and I'll get a report back from the director and see how that turned out. My wife stopped by there and said that there was quite a few vendors and small home-based businesses and other types of business that don't have a storefront that were well represented. So I'll find out more and report back next week or next month.
Thanks, Jeremy. Tammy?
Well, Jeremy just about made my report, but but I did go to that home business expo that Fortuna Business Improvement District put on, and it was very nice. It was nice to see home-based businesses actually there, and there's some that nobody even knows about, so it was really interesting to go, and it was presented very nice, so I did enjoy it, and I did see your wife there. And I was pretty impressed with the senior center at the Gene Lucas place too. They have a whole bingo screen set up for their bingo that we approved, and it's a nice building, and you know, just walking through that whole building and just going, wow, it was pretty impressive. So that was fun to go to that. And like Jeremy said, we both went to coffee with the chief, and I'm pretty impressed with our interim chief right now. I think he's doing a really good job. The department seems to be really liking him, so that's good. Starting this Thursday, I'll be going to the Measure Z meetings to hopefully get our drug task force officer and our school resource officer and our new little puppy that we'll be getting for the police department, our canine. Hopefully they're going to approve that too. So we'll be reporting on that. And I just wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow's vote day, so go down and make your vote count. So that's all my report.
Thanks, Tammy. So I went on vacation and Jeremy did my job for me, so that was very helpful. Thank you. I also got to attend the GLC grand opening and the Chamber Dinner Awards, and I actually have all of those, and I would like to congratulate the following people. And these are why these people are part of what makes Fortuna so great. So I just would like to really recognize all of them. So we had Katie Rowe as Ambassador of the Year, and that's a chamber member. Moonlight Catering was the Home-Based Business of the Year. Coast Central Credit Union was Best Customer Service. Ina Cabrera, who we've talked about, was Volunteer of the Year. He does an amazing job with law enforcement in our police department. Heckwood Edward Jones was Small Business of the Year. Santa Slay was Nonprofit of the Year. Humboldt Equity was New Business of the Year. Harry Hardin was Lifetime Achievement. Whitchurch Engineering was Business of the Year. And David Morris was Citizen of the Year. So just another congratulations to all of them. And that's part of the reason Fortuna is a great place to live and be. And we just really thank all of those people for their contributions. And kind of not really city, but kind of, the CR games were amazing on Friday night. Packed house, everybody was going crazy. The girls only won by 2 points, so it was like, if you like basketball, it was just the place to be that night. I like basketball. And with that, I think we are probably ready to adjourn.
Can I make one more announcement?
Sure.
Just because it's going to happen before our next meeting, Library Days is the March 14th, and it's one of the biggest fundraisers for the Friends of Fortuna Library. So I just want to make sure, and anybody that's watching has the opportunity to go out there and buy some books and have a meal and support that great volunteer organization. And then just because it's going to be right around the corner, the Daffodil Show is March 28th and 29th. Also, very, very well-attended and much appreciated effort from the Fortuna Garden Club.
And have you noticed how